Shalom Aleichem to everybody, and a good day. And Be'ezras Hashem will share hopefully some pearls of wisdom, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows them to come through. And as well for me, I'm listening to this as well. Be'ezras Hashem is Baruch. So, number one, I just wanted to start with how we have been starting that there's this nakuda of change and transitioning. And change and transitioning relates to two bechinas, two aspects of the way that we live. Change, things happen in life. And we are very programmed to change. It's really been part of our society since we were little kids, to follow the rules, to follow the bell, going to the classrooms and having our schedule in which classrooms to go to, and all through our life. Even, for example, the limitations of what we may have studied in higher education or the yeshivas, the seminaries that we have gone to, there's a certain programming that we follow. And that's change. It's a nakuda of change. Yet there's something internal as well. We have an internal world, and that's called transitioning. And the nakuda is our internal world keeping up with that which is going on in the world? Is our internal world of internal narrative made up of our physical sensations, our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts? That creates our narrative. Is that keeping up with actually what's going on outside? So for example, where this manifests is right now here, Chazdei Hashem, in Eretz Yisrael. We're in a situation where the reality is there may not be a war, yet you may hear a door close and your body shakes. Thank you. So what happens is you may hear the Shabbos siren. The Shabbos siren telling us it's going to be Shabbat, and your ears peak up, not in the best way. So we live life through creating associations and selecting events. And the selection and associations of the events that we go through become our narrative. And the question is, what is that narrative sharing to us, and when does it become awakened? So change is that something can happen, and transitioning is that even though now, for example, right now there's no, so to speak, war, the transitioning is my internal world is still reminding me something's going on. How does it remind me? So my physical sensations may jump when I hear something. My emotions, a lot of people are suffering from what's called anxiety, and anxiety is a little bit of an anomaly. And anxiety is this buzzing, so to speak, feeling which is unpleasant that people feel. A lot more people are feeling it. Why are they feeling it? It's a sign that your neurobiology is on overload, and lots of people are feeling it. And the question is, where are we with it? Our thoughts may race. We may have noisy thinking, polluted thinking. Now we say noisy and polluted thinking, but really, when we are speaking about this internal aspect of our experience, we need to understand there's a wisdom to it. Our internal world is always communicating to us. And this is part of what's tikkun hamidos. This is fixing up the midot. Fixing up the midot is recognizing that my internal world is always communicating to me. Another way of labeling what we are going through right now, another way of labeling it could be trauma. Just say the word trauma from those Americans. Trauma? Well, I say trauma. You say trauma. What do you say in America? Trauma. Okay.
In Israel, it's
trauma. So there's different layers. You have, for example, a simple trauma. You have a complex trauma, and a simple trauma typically is codified as one event that happened, and then a complex trauma are several events, ongoing events that are happening. So we're facing a reality where there's layers of trauma that are occurring to us. Now, once upon a time, we didn't have such a clear language of how to share that which is going on within the human experience, at least globally like we do today. But the nakuda, for example, of trauma is wise. Trauma, there's a wisdom to trauma. It's educating us, it's teaching us, but really another way of understanding this is our nefesh, the nefesh bahami, that's where we are labeling our thoughts and feelings and physical sensations live. That's where we are labeling that our expectations and assumptions live. That's where we are labeling my memories, my experience here so far, and I can plug into higher experiences through the neshama, but my experience are in the nefesh. So my nefesh is programmable. And tikkun hamidos, when we're speaking about tikkun hamidos and we're speaking about being metaher the midot, what we are sharing is a connected narrative with trauma. So tikkun hamidot is the availability to cultivate a healthy relationship with your nefesh and with all the different aspects of nefesh. We use words such as zrizus and simcha and ahava and yira. We've got our whole selection and our whole toolkit of emotions and ways of thinking that we relate, and we have the tools that belong to it. So we have books and books and books on this. And what this is sharing with us is that we need to metaken our nefesh. We call it cheshbon ha-nefesh. Why? Because nefesh is the levush. Nefesh is the clothing. Nefesh is the clothing, the levush, between the interface of that which is going on inside of you and that which is going on outside of you. So there's a lens. Consciousness, when we speak about consciousness is awareness. Awareness is seeing, and I'm seeing through a lens. That lens is my perception. My perception is this lens. This lens could be dirty, this lens can be clean, and even parts within the collective lens can be clean or dirty. And this is all to do with our nefesh. This is all to do with tikkun amidos. So even parts within the nefesh could be older or younger. And another way of saying that, parts within the nefesh can be contaminated or not contaminated. Parts within the nefesh can be cleaner or not cleaner. And I can learn to build a relationship generally with the nefesh and specifically with a specific midah. But this is as well to do with, for example, trauma and what we are experiencing now. That there are certain now, for many people, selections of experience that have been associated with a particular something which isn't so pleasant. So when they hear that door close, it sounds ever so similar to something else. And it's like, oh, so that's selection and association. A moment before I was okay, and hopefully a few moments afterwards, if I know to release it, I'll come back to myself. So part of our avodah is centering. Part of our avodah is having the capability, the capacity, the ability to reclaim our centering. To reclaim our centering. And the way we start to do that, two ways we start to do that. Number one, we've got das tachton chitzoni and das tachton penimi. Das tachton chitzoni, the simplest way to describe it is I become aware. I become aware. Instead of being stuck in my head, I now come out of my head. I become aware, stage one, and this may help that shift of transitioning, catching up to actually what's going on in this world and not being lost in your thinking. So I become aware of where I am. So I could just look around. Just look around the space I am in. Das tachton chitzoni, the space I am in. Listen to the sounds, the loudest sounds and the quietest sounds. And I can as well feel the ground under my feet. I could feel the floor. So just feel the floor under your feet. And there's times where maybe you even have to lie on the floor. Don't know if when was the last time you fully lied on the floor? On a certain respect, it's very therapeutic. I remember in London, there was a tzaddik who used to come and visit Rav Maimon, and there was a yid who really was suffering, and he gave him an avodah to help his bitachon. I want you to lie on the floor and feel the whole ground holding you up, and to know Hashem's holding you up. The floor's holding you up and Hashem's holding you up. And he sat with him. He met several more times with him. I wasn't privileged to be there when they met. But this is something really important. So, das tachton chitzoni, just look around. listen, feel the ground under your feet. You could start with feeling the ground under your feet, feeling the ground under your feet, listening and looking around. It's das tachton chitzoni. Das tachton penimi is a little bit more subtle, as we have described throughout this text. It's a little bit more subtle. It's the availability to connect to your more essential self. So I am the witness. But in the journey of meeting the truer self, we invited curiosity around the idea that to be aware of something, I have to be aware of what I am not. So I could be aware of what we call the nefesh self, and the nefesh self I can observe. I can ask the question, let's do it now. What am I feeling in my body right now? And you could do an internal body scan. What am I doing in my body right now? And just notice from your feet up to the top of your head. Notice what it feels like as you inhale and exhale. What does your body do? And just ask the question again and non-judgmentally observe. What am I feeling in my body? Ask the question and observe. And we can shift to the next question. What feelings am I feeling? What emotions am I feeling? And whatever is. There's no good, there's no bad, there's no right, there's no wrong. In this setting, we are becoming aware of whatever is in the present moment. What feelings am I feeling? Calm, tired, excited, whatever comes up, whatever appears. And then we can shift to the next question. What am I thinking? Ma ani choshev. What am I thinking? And to remember that our thoughts appear, they show themselves as imagery, and we can hear voices inside our head, the inner narrative. Ma ani choshev. Ask the question, and to the best of your ability, non-judgmentally observe. And if you find at any point your mind wandering, we have not two, but actually three tools. One tool is you could just place your attention back onto your breath. If you find your mind is wandering, just come back to the breath. Breathe. The second tool, das tachton chitzoni, just remind yourself, where am I right now? What space am I in right now? And the third tool is habata, lahabit, just to observe, das tachton penimi, what's going on inside of me right now? And we can call this a check-in. And the check-in is the availability to just note where I am right now. Sometimes the transitioning may be difficult because we're hungry, we need the loo, whatever it may be. Sometimes we are thirsty, we're dehydrated. And when you can do that check-in and you can cultivate even a minuscule percent of awareness, and you can then relate and react to it, that's going to help you. That's going to help you. So as a Hagdama, I just want to quickly just remind ourselves where we are up to. So we started, the journey begins, and Baruch Hashem, Zeichet to hopefully absorb wisdom teachings from wonderful teachers. And the first nakuda that we shared is everything we're sharing here is natural. Everything we're sharing here is the Tselem Elokim. This is how we work. And how do we know it's natural? That if every single person functions like this, there's something to it. Then we asked, who am I? And what we started off by saying, again, we just said it now, like the Rambam, to become aware of what something is, at first it's to become aware of what we are not. So if I'm aware of it, I'm not it. Then more about the three modes of experience, that what we suggested is, what am I not aware of, das tachton penimi? Sorry, what can I be aware of, das tachton penimi? I could be aware of the three modes of interpretation, my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensation. Then we went into how I can start observing, and we went and spoke a little bit about the nakuda of of habata. And we then shared we can ignore or explore an experience, which again could be very dramatic in someone's life when there's something unpleasant going on and you can pull back enough to contain and hold it. To say you can completely get rid of it would be nice, and you can practice exercises in order to do that. But remember, Siyata D'Shmaya, Hashem's in the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that will gift you the ability to cleanse yourself out or not. Shkacha pratis. Then we spoke about the eye, and really that's where we are up to. We're up to the eye. Now, what I'm going to just share is, number one, as we now go into the text, in my edition, page 19, and we're going to start from, we all have the same tools, but can choose how to use them. We are going to do that, yes. So, a couple of things. Number one, just a akar zatov to Gamzuli for sponsoring these sessions. A bracha and hatzlacha to Rabbi Yaakov Lehman. It was his birthday, and he and his family should have mamash bracha, mazel and hatzlacha. And chazde Hashem to Am Yisrael, may we be strong, well and healthy, balei das, and learn to recognize what is important and focus in on what is important, to hopefully see, hear, and soothe each other, that we can connect to our higher self and connect to who we truly should be as Tiferes Yisrael. And we can do it. We can do it. As the Rebbe said, 1992, everything, or a bit earlier, everything's here for us. The whole, everything is in place. Everything is in place for the Geula, whatever that means, however that manifests, but everything is in place. No, Lubavitcher. Lubavitcher Rebbe. So,
page 21 in this other book.
Okay, 21 in the other book. Again, the title is, we all have the same tools, and we can choose how to use them. So I want to start with the following premise. We're coming up to the 3 weeks. And one thing we are going to hear time and time again within these 3 weeks is this nakuda, which is an important nakuda of achdus and unity. Now, one thing that we've shared before, and it's so important to take into consideration, is when we speak about any concept in Yiddishkeit, there's a context to it. There's a context, there's a mahalach, there's a derech. And with context, there's a background, there's a foreground. With context, there's a before and there's an after. And any aspect to do with Yiddishkeit always falls into this nakuda of context. And this is something incredibly important. When we're learning any sugya in Shas, when we're learning about halacha, there's context. The time period we live in, the communities we live in, the societies we live in, and all of this needs to be taken into consideration. This is something so important to take into consideration. So too, when we're speaking about achdus. When we're speaking about achdus, is achdus an isolated idea? Oh, you have to love one another, that's be unity. Oh. Or is there a context to it? What do I mean by that? And by the way, this is why Gemara Brachas Tav Zayin, Shimush is so important. Shimush is so important. As Dayan Lopin would explain, what is Shimush? Shimush is transmitting the context of the words on the pages. Anybody could learn the words on the pages. That's academia. That's academia. Of course you could learn the words on the pages. Of course you can get tested on the words on the pages. You can get tested on Chazal and on the source of where this particular halachic concept comes from. You can get tested on that. However, that's not where the magic takes place. The magic takes place when you sit with somebody and you learn to paskin. And Dayan Lopin, as we said, Shimush is context. Shimush is the availability to cultivate a way of observing a situation, to ask questions on a situation, to then know how to approach the person in the situation they are in and give them, hopefully, Ratzon Hashem. So Shimush is more important than the smicha itself. And that's something incredibly important. Context is golden. Context, context, context. And what I would say about Limud HaTorah and Yiddishkeit, we are the nation of context, which is as well the nation of subtlety. Subtlety and context go together. We're the nation of context, we're the nation of subtlety. So when we speak about Achdus, when we speak about unity, so the question is, what's the context of it? And I'd like to share something with you. And obviously, as I've said from the beginning, anything we're sharing here is not the only answer. It is an answer. It's a curious investigation. Because as we know, there's many answers to one singular question. There's many definitions to one concept. And we're okay with that. So we're going to offer, you're going to think about it, you're going to judge as usual. So when we speak about Achdus, when we speak about unity, what I would like to share is that there is a background, there is a context, and if that context and that background is not met, we're not going to achieve our goal. And what I'm going to share with you is not difficult. It really isn't difficult. It's a different way of being. It's not difficult, it's different. And the more that we can understand this, the better availability there will be to cultivate Achdus. And I'm going to share something. I'm asking you to think about it. Think about it. Don't, again, anything I'm sharing here, I'm just a channel sharing what has helped me, that I heard from my teachers, and I'm trying to just get out the way. So this nakuda that I'd like to share with you is as following. Every generation, and I'm not going to go into the Mara Makomis here, we've got it in other places, but every generation has its Avodah. Every generation has its tikkun. This is found in Chazal, it's found in Sifrei Kabbalah, it's found in the world of Musa, the world of Hasidus. Every single generation has its Avodah. And over the last 20-something years, sitting with my teachers, the Biala Rebbe, and sitting with the Pilsner Rav and many other teachers, I've noticed there are 4 fundamental areas that we really need to prioritize within our thinking. And when we prioritize in our thinking, and when we can make a shift in action upon these points, I believe that there'll be a radical shift, and it'll be a very, very quick shift. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that everything I'm going to say could either happen naturally, because I believe naturally it will happen. I've been speaking about this for over 25 years already, and I'm seeing in the last 5-6 years, naturally it's starting to happen. But those people who actually want to be proactive, you can hack the system. So you can speed everything up. I would prefer if everything is sped up. It'll leave me more time to do the things that, that I want to be doing more of. In the meantime, you just have to deal with the bits and pieces that fall into place within society, within people's thinking, in order to help this, so to speak, healing. But listen here, and let's see what happens. The first avodah for our generation is what we would call physical and mental well-being. We have to prioritize physical and mental well-being. And if we don't prioritize physical and mental well-being, we'll just look out at the world, we see what happens. The second shift, what we need to prioritize, the Arizal and the Zaya brings this, is the tikkun on what we call Hod, Netzach and Yesod. Let me explain. Hod, Netzach and Yesod, and I'm specifically, for those who are sensitive, sharing it in that way. I'm starting from Din, Chesed, and then going to the Tiferes, so to speak, the middle. I'm purposely sharing it this way, and I'm not explaining why right now. But you have Hod, Netzach and Yesod. Usually you would say Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Okay. Hod, Netzach and Yesod. Let's start from the Yesod. We can translate Yesod as resilience. Yesod is the availability to be strong. It's the availability to connect and reconnect. And Yesod has this ability to diminish and then to become whole and connected again. And the tzaddik falls 7 times. What is the nakuda of Yesod? One nakuda, one layered understanding, one midah of Yesod is resilience. Now when we look out at the world, what we notice is so many people lack resilience. Well, the Zohar and Arizal tells us in our generation we need to practice resilience. We have to metaken this nakuda of Yesod. We are going to fall rapidly, many times. Are we going to have the ability to get back up? B'chin of Yesod. Well, let me ask you a very simple question. How do you open up Yesod? How do you become more resilient? How do you practice bouncing back? So this is an nakuda of Netzach. Netzach we can translate as what? Hope and optimism. Hope and optimism. Hope and optimism is what? Hope and optimism is today and tomorrow will be better. It's a conscious practice of recognizing the future is good. The future holds so much light, so many gifts. So you've got this shift where we need to be resilient. How do we open up resilient? Hope and optimism. And again, we look out at the world, and it's interesting. A lot of people are hopeful, especially with things that have been going on right now, because it's awoken this messianic buzz. But a lot of people are not hopeful. A lot of people are pessimistic. They're critical. So you've got Yesod, you've got Netzach, resilience, and you've got hope and optimism. Well, how do you open up the hope and optimism? So we know that you open up Yesod, resilience you can open up through the practice of hope and optimism. And how do you open up hope and optimism? Well, that's Hod. Hod is gratitude, becoming a conscious being of gratitude, having conscious practices of gratitude each and every day. And really it's a gateway, it's a triad, it's a cycle. When we open up gratitude, Hod, it will naturally start to open up the midah of Netzach. You become more hopeful and optimistic. And when you open up hope and optimism, it opens up resilience. And it's this triad, it's this cycle. So that Arizal, based on the Zohar and others, the Emek HaMelech, explain that we are to open up. The Shara Gan Eden points this out as well in a passing statement, and the Omid HaAvayda points it out, that we are to practice and being metaken and cleanse and heal these last three spheres, Hod, Netzach and Yesod. This is the second principle. First, physical and mental well-being. Second principle for our generation is to metaken Hod, Netzach and Yesod. What's the third? The third principle that we really need to articulate is collaboration and contribution. When we look out at the world, there's so much external fracture, global fracture. There's so much nationalistic fracture, and I would even suggest there's fracture within ourselves. A lot of people are suffering, there's fracture within ourselves. We need to, within ourselves, connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and heal all the parts and bring them together, collaboration and contribution. The nakuda of collaboration and contribution we could label as achdus, unity. The fourth principle that we really, really need to own and master in this generation is a cleansing approach to physicality. We live in one world and one world only. It's true to say, as we said from the Baal Shem Tov, that we're aliens in this world. We live in this world, which is a physical world of materialism. And for so long, for right reasons, no one's putting anybody down here, but our attitude towards materialism hasn't been so bright. And the one reason being, I remember I asked one of the Musa greats, Rav Volby, why is it that we constantly put down materialism? So he gave a very interesting answer. Number one is greed, but number two is people didn't have it. So what you wanted to do was trying to comfort people that your spirituality is in conjunction with your lack, and to find strength in that. And he told some scary stories with Nevada and what happened through the war and days on end without food. It was scary just listening. But there's a shift in our generation. We know, according to the mystics, that we live in the most abundant generation. This generation is the most abundant generation. It was said hundreds of years ago. So what do we do with that? What's the message for our nation? The message for our nation is the fact all we have is the physical world. All we have is the physical world. And what that is as well telling us, based on what we're told by the mystics, is there's a beer in its Isis Kedusha. Maybe that's too much of a jump. But we know from Adam and Chava, from Chet Adam ate from the tree, and there's what we call a shattering. That shattering, those sparks, these holy sparks, fell into the physical world, became embedded in the physical self, became embedded in the emotions, in the mind. Baal Shem Tov Al HaTorah says every aspect of reality, holy sparks are embedded. And the quality of our consciousness and how we interact with physicality and the different layers and variations of physicality will determine the excavation, gathering, and elevation of these sparks. And when all the sparks are excavated, gathered, and elevated, there will be a meta-elevation that will take place. Whatever we call it, Geula, Golus, Geula, we'll move out of the exile into redemption. So these four prioritization in our thinking, I need to prioritize in my thinking physical and mental well-being. I need to prioritize in my thinking gratitude, leading to hope and optimism and resilience. Hod, Netzach, and Yesod. I need to prioritize collaboration and contribution. I need to prioritize that I live in this world and I have to understand how this world works and I have to interface with it with consciousness and Kedusha and to hold the wealth. Abundance. We have abundance. Abundance is godliness. Shefa. Non-godliness is scarcity. Our attitude must change, and it is changing. Let me just now go to this point of unity. How on earth is a person going to collaborate and contribute with somebody if they don't have physical and mental well-being? How on earth is a person who is not a person of gratitude, of optimism and resilience going to collaborate and contribute? How are we going to have achdus if we don't get the first two principles in check? So what happens? Once a year, we speak achdus, 3 weeks and the 9 days and achdus, and then we go back to the way we were before. But I believe, and this is kapshutai, what I heard from my teachers, you have to be led into unity. You have to be led into achdus. It doesn't happen by itself. But what happens, the stronger your body is, the healthier your body is. And sometimes things are gifted to us that are unpleasant to do with our body, and we take it as it comes. I'm not dismissing that. I'm taking and validating that as well. Typically, there's a lot in our power to be physically healthy. Typically, there's a lot in our power to have mental well-being. And again, there are times, and I'm validating the reality that we don't always have the choice. Like, okay, I'm not going there right now, but I'm validating that point. So when we can care physical and mental well-being, and then when we can practice Hod, Netzach, and Yesod, I feel good within myself. I'm primed for then collaborating and contributing. And when I collaborate and contribute, that's where the magic happens. That's Tiferes Yisrael. That's where the deepest healings come from. Deepest healings come from that place. That's where the greatest innovation comes from. So when we say this sentence, we all have the same tools, but can choose how to use them. The Nakuda is we're all made the same way. We really are. We all have an neshama, ruach, and nefesh. And we're all learning the same Torah, and we're all davening the same davenings, and we're all learning the same Musas Farim. And what happens is when we understand that you as your incarnation now, we say your incarnation is your curriculum. Your moment-to-moment experience now is your tikkun. That moment-to-moment experience and the quality of your tikkun hamidos, the tikkun on your nefesh, the quality of your consciousness, your das, having the availability to, so to speak, gaze up and draw down the neshama into your consciousness, flood your consciousness and flood your nefesh, you're going to be a wondrous and wonderful and magical vehicle for being Megala Elokus. I want to point something out, that if you are working towards that, even when you and I, when we have a bad day, there'll be somebody else to hold us. That's what it's about as well. We're not saying, oh, every day is good. It's not about the expectation that every day is good. It's building a very real community where people can work together and people can understand, oh, you're having a bad midos day? Again, if you're in the same community and you have the communal language, yeah, midos is stuck up my nefesh. But the nakuda is that, okay, what can I, do you want me to leave you alone? Yeah, I hope that won't offend you. No, not at all, here, go for it. So, there's context to achdus. And it's not difficult, it's different. And it's achievable. But we have to prime ourselves. And that as well could be done in the simplest of conversations, even just to know these principles. These are the tikkunim for our generation. These are the tikkunim for our generation. How do we know that? You look outside and see what's missing. So before we start reading into the text, which probably is going to be this week and next week, this chapter, I want to take a junction point here for questions. Any questions? Any questions? Yes.
When we speak about actus, obviously we can only control our own approach to actus, but how does one grow towards actus without enabling others to grow away from actus? Specifically what I'm asking is, if, let's say you have two people, and one of them is focusing on gratitude and hope and resilience, and is focusing on getting their house in order in terms of physical and mental health, is looking for collaboration and contribution, and accepts that we live in a physical world and we need to have a healthy relationship with physicality. And the other side, the other person, does not have gratitude for what the first person brings to the table, is pessimistic, is looking for division, is not looking to collaborate, wants to do things their way. How can actus grow from such a relationship? Is that not enabling the second person to rule the roost and to drive the narrative in a direction that creates almost an abusive dynamic?
So the question was heard. A person's working, and if I'm misrepresenting your question, tell me, but a person's working on these 4 generational principles. I should care for my physical and mental health. I should care for living a life of gratitude, hope, and optimism and resilience. I should care for collaboration and contribution and understanding the physical world in the right context. And the other person is not there. They want their own way, divide, whatever it may be. I think it's a much larger conversation, but what I would start off by saying is 2 things. Number 1, that's the battle that we are faced with. And to understand that's the battle we are faced with. It's not a question like, oh, that's a surprise. No, this is the battle that we are faced with. And the answer is the more that you can hold it together in your life. That's the important nakuda. And you will find people who are on the same page. You will find people who are on the same page. If you have the availability to be in, even if it's a small knit of friends that can live a certain way of being, and it doesn't have to be so conscious, it just has to be reminded to us here and there. It's not like, again, it's not difficult, it's different. Just to see the other person, hear the other person. Kiddush time, what do we say here? Just, when we talk, just see and hear the other person. Little shifts like that are incredibly powerful. So I would say that everything we're sharing here, I believe you can find. You may not find it in certain people, and you may find elements in certain people, and that's okay as well. Because it's an inside-out reality more than an outside-in reality. It's a reality where I'm being present, I know these principles, and I'm living with these principles, and wherever they show themselves, I'll meet it with grace. I'll meet it with grace.
Clarify that when I was asking the question, I was thinking more globally, that we have sort of the center core, let's say, of Am Yisrael, who would want to grow towards actus and is open to collaboration and contribution, and then we have more extremes on the right and more extremes on the left who don't want to move in that direction. And my question was more, how does the center core of moderate, open-minded, thinking, collaborative people not enable the extremes to become more extreme?
By concentrating on yourself.
Okay.
By being a Baal and Balas Das, by being centered, sometimes you don't have to do anything in order to create change. I've shared with you in different settings a number of different stories where one person chose to work on themselves and the other person did not want to work on themselves. But then after a certain amount of time, the person who didn't want to work on themselves saw how much that person's working on themselves is thriving, and that person didn't say anything, and then lo and behold, after a certain amount of time, the person who didn't want to work on themselves, what are you taking? What are you on? Well, do you remember that course or that therapy or that learning that I said I was doing? I'm learning this safer, whatever it may be, I'm going to this class. It's really powerful. Oh wow, okay, I see you living different. And as I said, as I premised this, everything that we're sharing is natural. So we see in our generation today so many people wanting to heal. Mental and physical well-being has taken a place at the table. People are speaking about it on all sorts of levels. And again, we've been speaking about this for 20-something years already. But the nakuda is, what was shared is trust the process. All we can do is trust the process. Either you're going to be like the Talmidei Hagra, and really the Balei Avoda from Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, you're going to be the activist that at least owns this. But the activist that owns this, especially from the derech of the Nestorim, you don't have to make a noise, no fans and whistles. You understand ever so deeply that your curriculum is your incarnation. My incarnation is my curriculum. There's a divine experience and divine encounter. Divine experience is how I feel with the divine, how I feel, how the divine is flooding through me. And then there's divine encounter, that every experience I have is a manifestation of that. And there's no bells and whistles. I can be really quiet. I can come in and I could leave. No one has to know anything. The avodah of the Nestorim was very snua. It was quiet. It was dak. It really is, and it should be. And I do believe ultimately, even though it's a longer road to healing, you have to put something out there. Like we are here. You have to put something out there in order to allow people to know. But at the end of the day, every single moment is a moment that is the most precious of places, the most special of people, and the most sacred time. It's impossible to move out of that. The question is, how aware are you of it? And that's the magic. The more we become conscious, the more I can become aware of it. So when we're speaking about having all the same tools, I'm always going to relate to somebody else. And it should be with an understanding that they are relating to their midos in the present moment. They're relating to their nefesh in the present moment. And there's always this ebb and flow. I'm in das, I'm in nefesh. I'm in das, I'm in nefesh. I'm in das and in nefesh. This is called Ratz V'Shav. Lukutei Ma'aran Torah. Hey, there's this running and returning. And it's natural, and it's always, there's a cadence, there's a rhythm. And for sure, I can shift more into a state of das. I could spend more and more time in a state of das. But Baal Shem Tov, for example, the Baal Shem Tov explains in various places that if somebody tells you that you can stop your thinking, they're a shakran, they're a liar. There's a cadence, there's hashkacha pratis. All we can do is know the system better. We can learn to know our machinery in a simplified and more sophisticated way. And all we can do is work with it to the best of our ability and constantly push. We want to be the heroes of our story, not the victims of our story. That takes radical responsibility. To become the hero of your narrative, to become the person who is the winner in every situation. You know, one of the Biala Rebbe, I remember by the Biala Rebbe, my father and the Rebbe were having a conversation. And my father used the term, I failed, it didn't work out. He says, no such thing as failure. No such thing, only learning, only opportunity. There was no vocabulary within the Rebbe's lexicon of failure. There's learnings and opportunities. And it's true. It's a way you think. And we've said this before. Seeing is believing is a partial truth. But the way you see is a truer truth. So the way you look at something is more important than what you are looking at. Your perception is always going to shadow what you are looking at. So we want to upgrade. This is tikkun amidas. The better I can upgrade the way I'm working inside. So for example, if I see somebody and a thought of criticism comes up, that's shadowing my perception. But if I can meet that part and figure out why, stop already, what's going on? Oh, because I'm jealous. Okay, good, let's talk. And you can massage out the wrinkles in that specific part of criticism and critical thinking, and it's not there. So you see that person now, it's not there. You don't judge them negatively. What's going to happen in your life? You're going to be better off. You're going to be better off. It's very, very straightforward and simple. The more you mataken your midas, the better off you will be. And this is why, for example, in the beginning of Evan Shleimer, the Vilna Gaon writes, right at the beginning, and in Seisel Katan, Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, the Heilige Zayda, both Zaydas, they say the same thing. The Zayda, the Vilna Gaon, and the Zayda Noam Elimelech say the same thing. The ikar of your life is to work on your midas. The Gra writes, Lama lo chayim. Why are you living if you're not working on your midas? It's very powerful. Really, it's a very big power sentence. If you're not working on your midas, why are you alive? You are in charge. It's very powerful. It's giving you a lot of power. It's putting the power into your hands. Your life is in your hands. Make it good. Why not work on your midas? Make your life as beautiful as possible. And you can sculpture that through developing your midot and your perception. So let's go into the text now as a very long Hagdama, but I feel it's a needed Hagdama. And the people that are in front of me, I think it's worth it. We're building, and we're moving. And we're coming at it from different ways. It's all good. Okay. In my meeting with my mentors, in my next meeting, my mentors shared with me yet another profound and natural truth. That is, all human beings on the planet are subject to the same laws. We all have pretty much the same stuff. We all experience gravity and the seasons. We all experience the heartbeat and the rhythm of our breath. Based on these universal laws, and obviously there are many more universal laws, we're led to believe that they instruct our day-to-day living. What makes us different from one another is our level of consciousness and how we use our creativity to choose our next action. What makes us different is the questions that we ask. What makes us different is how we choose to interact with life and the moments in front of us. What makes us different is how we relate to our experience as we meet them. What I have learned thus far is that the truth that I thought until now to be a real truth was that seeing is believing. And I'm starting to experience the falsehood of this. I do not believe through my seeing. After contemplating these words, I realize there's a far deeper truth. I believe, and through my belief I see. I am seeing the world through my belief system, through my constructs of reality, my frameworks of thinking, through my emunah. And with these tools I'm actually able to help influence the reality of my next moment and how I influence what I see. I just want to point out two things that Baruch Hashem last week, Rabbi Yamin pointed out to Rashi. You've got seeing is believing, but obviously there is the truth of seeing is believing as coming from your beliefs. So Nakuda is that there's this loop that occurs. The truth is, believing is seeing. I see through my beliefs. But then what happens is when you, so to speak, look at the world a certain time, that's going to come up in front of you and it's then going to trigger you. So there's an inside-out reality and there's an aspect of an outside-in reality. This was in last week's Sedra to do with Rashi, very, very powerful with Moshe and Aaron, and how Aaron...
You couldn't believe Aaron died.
They couldn't believe that Aaron died. So they were seeing and believing. Yet they couldn't believe it. They were told something they couldn't believe. Which again, this nakuda of seeing is believing, this is based on the pasuk in Habakkuk, it's based on the sugya, the tzaddikim in Makot Kaf Daled, that we see through our emunah. And let me just pick up on this a little bit. Classically, we use the term emunah in translation as belief and faith. But we can add another dimension, and that is emunah is frameworks of thinking. Emunah is perception. And I see through my perception. I see through my frameworks of thinking. The Rob Shitzer brings, and it's based on earlier sources as well, if you take the oisios of machshava, you get besimcha. That my thinking, the way I think, the way I perceive, the way internally my constructs of reality will lead me to how I am viewing life and then living life. My interactions, if I'm positive, my interactions, if I'm hopeful and optimistic, my interactions, if I'm full of gratitude, are always going to be better than when a person is pessimistic, negative, etc., critical. So I believe, and through my belief, I see. And think about it, reflect on this. I'm making a massive call here. I'm saying that every single human being works this way. And somebody told me this, and I had to think about it. It's the same for all of us. We hear something, we should think, we should talk, we should converse, we should ask questions, we should explore curiously. We should come to realize that the availability to live a wonderful life, a big percentage of that is in our hands. We have bechira. We can become the hero of our story. Radical responsibility. And remember in tikkun amidos, whatever is louder grabs our attention, and whatever we feed becomes stronger. So I want to feed positivity. I want to feed positivity. Because when I feed positivity to my whole life, that's what will become stronger. And I want to hislavus, I want to make all the good midas loud, because that's more what will grab my attention. And we need commitment. Commitment. If you commit to a life of avodas Hashem on whatever level, if you commit to knowing how you work and then masterfully having the ability to be the mechanic over your own mechanisms, you can lead your life to good places, to have people around you who care for you, to be in a community who can see and hear you to the best of their availability, to work on ourselves, to build ourselves. But the ability to live a great life really is in our own hands to whatever level. In life, I am unconsciously and subtly trained to experience the world through my expectations and assumptions. As I meet any experience, there's seemingly a set of rules that shares with me ever so quickly how to relate to the given situation. Is it good? Is it not good? Fun? Safe? For example, if a person's expectations and rules become perhaps... let me start that again. For example, if a person meets a dog... I missed out the sentence. For example, if a person meets a dog, for one person, they can be... Their expectations and assumptions could be a warning sign. And rules, because perhaps they've had a bad run-in with a dog. For another person, their expectations and assumptions are sharing good rules, because they've had good experiences with a dog. Each person will allow their expectations and assumptions to guide how they behave around the dog, and will shape the present experience. And that present experience feeds future expectations. Okay, let me just say that outside. Yes. But you get it. I'm just saying this for me, for my own nefesh. Okay. The nakuda is, as we live life, we're always relating to our expectations and assumptions. So we have these set of internal messaging that really tells us quickly how to relate and react to something. So, for example, if I walk in a room and I see a loving friend, and I see nice food maybe, or I see a coffee, whatever it may be, for one person, one of those situations may be fantastic. You walk in from feeling like, to, that's you. Because you can gift yourself the availability to feel safe, because there's been a set of expectations and assumptions that have led you to that belief. And then in the present moment, your expectations and assumptions tell you how to relate and react to the given situation. Here we brought the idea of a dog, okay, the experience of a dog. So what happens is that there is an individual, they had a bad experience with a dog, so their set of expectations and assumptions leads them not to the best experience of being around a dog, but the other person has had a wonderful experience with dogs. So their expectation and assumption lead them to have a good experience around a dog. And it's the same with anything and everything. Same with anything and everything. Our whole life is guided by this principle. It is a fact. It is a fact. And the more we are mataken the nefesh, the more we do tikkun amidais. And again, our expectations and assumptions I'm sharing here are found within that part of us that is programmable. The more I can put better knowledge in my head, the more that I can reclaim my expectations and assumptions, the better I can lead myself to live a very, very good life. It is a fact. So what ultimately I want, and we did mention this in one of the sessions, is that there's an akudah of nefesh bahami. You've got the Adam and you've got bnei Torah. We want to take the Torah, bring it into the world of Adam. Adam is the place of consciousness, and then bring that into our nefesh. Through that, using the Torah as a guide in how to relate to each and every moment. That's ultimately what we want. Starting off just by das tachton is having the availability to be that Adam. What is Adam? That the stimulus and response, the hisaris and the dachav, the trigger and reaction in the world of nefesh, at first when das is in nefesh, is touching. So I see something, I jump, my expectations and assumptions, bang. But then the more I become conscious, the more I could realize I can observe habata, my expectations and assumptions, and I can make a gap between the expectation and assumption and how I act. So there's now a gap. That's bechin of Adam. That's, so to speak, mindfulness, if we want to call it that. I become mindful. It's bechin of Adam, das. So then I can choose, look at that. I related like this to this situation. I wonder if next time I can actually become aware of the internal feeling as that happens. And then if a person relates to the situation again, look at that, I'm now feeling that feeling. So there's gradients of how we change. At first I become aware of how I'm acting, then I could become aware and bring the awareness closer to the actual event, whereas it could be a few hours, a week later, we start to think, look how I related to that. That's interesting. And then I can get it closer and closer. And then in the moment eventually, wow, okay, I've just done a check-in. This is how I'm feeling, and I don't want to relate to this way. So there's a process. We spoke that out a little bit. But the point that we're trying to share here is a realistic point that the availability to live well is where? In your hands. It's in your hands. The more grounded we could become, das tachton, chitzoni and penimi, the more we could do a check-in, the more we become aware of the internal stories we are healing. And the more internal stories, the more aware we're hearing, we can heal, we can work with them, we can upgrade the nefesh, we do the cheshbon and nefesh, we can do the work. Let me just finish this sentence. Okay, finish this paragraph. At first, this sounds somewhat abstract. However, in reality, it's rather simple. How do I know how I relate to the coffee in front of me? How do I know how to relate to the voice at the end of the phone? How do I know the difference between a close friend and a person I've just met? I only know what to do based on expectations and assumptions that I've built after previous experiences. So I think if we contemplate it, this is rather logical. This is quite rational. We can tag, again, educationally, Not such big steps, step by step by step by step, subtle it may be, but nevertheless, through conversation, through curious questioning, we can build a different algorithm. Even just by talking, we can build a different algorithm. So, Be'ezras Hashem, let's take a moment, please. Let's take a moment, and let's just be mizbainen. If you want, you can talk to each other a couple of minutes. What did you hear today? What did you hear? And you could do the same, those who are listening. What did you hear? And just gift yourself that availability to recognize that you wield a lot of strength. You wield a lot of strength. You wield a lot of power, and you can be, through commitment and through healthy relationship, you can become the hero of your story. And that's what we need. We need so many types of heroes. So we need many, many types of heroes. And for those people who are working on themselves and building themselves, this is what it is about. This is how we are going to not just react to the situation and fighting, but how we are, before there's any fight, through the internal work, there won't be fighting. Through the internal work, eventually, just by being present, you are mitigating dinim in this world. You're mitigating harsh judgments. The way you can hold yourself and the way you can relate to whatever's going on. Sometimes it's keeping your mouth closed and not adding fuel to the fire. So there's a lot to talk about, but let me give you permission just to, talk. Seder Gamur. Just think about what you've heard. Do you want to join in as well? Or you need to go? Okay, Seder. Could be misvainen. And then a couple of minutes, and then we will take some questions and move on to something new for today, consciously, hopefully. Batzlacha Rabba. Oy, nachamu ami. Look at that, Rabbi Nachman, Kaf Aleph. Nachamu ami. Basically what we're saying, the chisroinus of exile, eino eile lefi aruch chisaron hadas. Shkoyach Rabbi Nachman. He's good. I'm saying Rabbi Nachman always speaks out what needs to be heard. So he says that the exile relates directly to the lacking of das. Kaf Aleph. Yud Aleph. Nachamu, okay. Good? Okay, Beseder. Heilige Chevra, online, offline, Shkoyach, Mishta Bracha, Mazel and Hatzlacha, Kol Tov, Kol HaYeshuas.